You could always give me a different name. Yeah. Well, let me interrupt. It seems like in the chat they're saying they can hear me, but they can't hear you.
Oh, well, that's a good thing because I was just babbling because I was trying to first fix the text. So I apologize about that. I have fixed my sound now. I believe, I have to mute myself when I play the ad. So I apologize. I apologize for that, everybody. Um,
Okay.
so I was saying everybody was. First of all, I welcome Sam Shanklin again. I wasn't sure he was joining me today, so I had to fix my scene here to include his name in the text. It is completely unfair, of course, for a player of my status to be named and not Sam. So I've corrected that mistake.
Hey, how many national championships have you won? Probably more than me.
I have won two adult championships
There you
in
go.
admittedly in a larger country, but also a much less populated country, the country of Canada. So, but where oil traded negative long before the U.S., maybe by 6 hours or so today. So, but this is neither here nor there. We had an interesting day of chess today, right? I mean, we had Magnus playing against Faruja in what was, for some people the most hotly expected match, and then we had a Karu against Anish Giri. What did you think of the chess today, Sam?
I mean, it wasn't wildly different from what I'm expecting. I mean, there were two close matches. I mean, the big thing is we've seen now 6 matches. The biggest margin of victory was 3-1, right? I mean, that's sort of what I would expect with guys like these, who I think are reasonably evenly matched. I mean, Magnus, I think, could have scored more points today, but beyond that, the matches sort of went about as you'd expect. I don't know. I was very annoyed with Hikaru for playing the exchange Slav. I mean, he was one of my biggest chess heroes growing up. But well, given the way the game went, maybe he won't do it
Well,
again.
I thought this would give you yet again another opportunity to speak about your repertoire a little bit because it is
Yeah.
basically aligned as covered in your book or in
Well,
your chessable course.
Anish played a completely different variation than what I'm recommending, but his
Yeah.
thought process, I think, was completely the same. That he should be trying to equalize first, which he managed to do, and then look for more later. And he was simply getting his pieces out, not trying to do anything special and or or cause any major imbalances. First equalize and then play. And it also shows that yeah, he played the Slav move order, allowing the exchange Slav when he was down a point and potentially really would like to win the game. So well, he deviated from my repertoire very early because he didn't bother playing A6. I think that his attitude was very similar to what I would advocate.
Fair enough. All right, I guess I'm going to switch to the screen with the game here so we can start going through the games. I figured we would start with Magnus Ali Reza, especially because that first game was I think a pretty interesting
Always start with Magnus.
opening. Um, so I figured we would start with that. As you all have probably seen, Magnus won this match, but it was pretty hotly contested, especially because of what happened in the second game, which we'll go through, which was a pretty crazy game. So Magnus played d4, not a surprise. Ali Reza goes for the Ragozin. Do you know if that is that the main thing in his repertoire? Do you know he seems to play a whole bunch of different things? I know on the internet he just plays like random stuff. Do you know if he plays this
I
usually? Or?
think I don't know. He moves around a bit. I mean, I would think that if there was one opening with Black against D4, I would associate with Ferrugia. It would be the King's Indian,
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
he moves around a bit, and I mean, the King's Indian is a line that you cannot play it exclusively. If somebody knows it's coming, they can hurt you. I mean, it's fundamentally unsound, but it's so difficult to prove that if you're even caught remotely by surprise, it's really hard to necessarily like get an advantage out of the opening. But if you know it's coming and because someone plays it every game, that's sort of asking for trouble. But so it can be your main opening, but I don't know anybody really good who only plays the King's Indian. There's a lot of people who do play King's Indian, but you can't only play it.
Yeah, it's a it's a tough one when you're a target in some of these lines that go so deep, right?
Yeah.
All right, so Magnus plays CD ED Bishop F4. Of course, Bishop G5 is the
Yeah.
old.
Bishop F4 is not so bad though. I've played
No,
it a
yeah,
couple times myself.
I guess it's gotten more popular, right? I mean, it's
Yeah, I mean, Elyanov was the first to popularize it at a couple of games in 2014. He crushed Sarge, then I crushed Fan, and then ever since then, it picked up a little bit of popularity, and then people sort of found how to hang on against it, and it fell out of favor. But maybe Magnus is revitalizing it.
yeah, and I guess he played it twice today, right? So we'll get to look at it a little bit. So this one was interesting. Ali Reza plays knight c6, rook c1, knight e4. I looked at the theory a little bit, and I guess all of this has been played.
I think this is the best way for Black.
Yeah, knight d2, g5. Now, I guess there were some games that went with bishop g3 instead of bishop e3, but apparently black can take and then take on d4, and somehow it looks like it's okay. I mean, I looked at
Yeah, it's funny. It'll take a little bit of time, but you can't really open the center that fast for white, and Black's king will be very safe on the queen side.
Okay. Yeah, so Magnus plays the much more testing bishop e3, and it leads to frankly some pretty strange position. I guess they can play. Well, he takes on c3. I guess f5 is also possible right away, but it tends to transpose.
Yeah.
bc.
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I mean this position, it's like it's a very normal position, except both sides have one severely misplaced minor piece. I think White's bishop on e3 is worse than Black's knight on c6. I mean they're both pretty stupid, but that also but also like g5 is a little out of place. But this is normal. Like for example, if this move knight c6 puts the knight on a bad square, but it sort of compels you to play bishop e3, like this would be kind of akin to playing like queen e7 in the Scotch, where it's not like e7 is a good square for the queen. It clearly isn't, but e2 is even worse for white. So it's sort of I don't know. I mean, a lot of the time when you find like a variation like this where both sides are accepting serious disharmony in their position, sort of by force, it can lead to very interesting play.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So yeah, and then it gets very concrete. It's sort of complicated. Bishop a3, rook b1 is forced, f5, and now Magnus played g3, and I think if my database, which I think it is up to date, I think g3 might be a novelty. I mean, I don't know if it was intended to be like if it's something that he really prepared or anything. I guess f4 had been played before.
Yeah, I mean, but g3 it's such a human move.
I mean, yeah, of course, it's a totally natural. So there was a game. I actually think maybe g3 was played once, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. But f4 was playable too, and then they go like queen e7. There was a game that I think it was a Grishchuk game from the Pro Chess League this year, went like this, and White sacrificed a pawn and actually got a pretty nice position. It was a strong player with White too. Well, it was Nizhnik, I think. Quite and Nizhnik did beat Grishchuk in that game, and I think they played like pawn takes, and it was complicated, but it looks like White got a decent position. Nothing incredibly.
This kind of position would always appeal for White to me. Like I've noticed that in terms of my own evaluations, I'm often I tend to prioritize piece activity much higher than like pawn structure material and things like that. And, sense. I don't know. But that would appeal for White. But yeah, so this one was interesting though, because Magnus chose to play queen b3 instead of f4 directly. And this is somewhat surprising to me because it feels like the bishop on a3 is not very good, and the queen b3 will run into knight a5 someday. So I'm sure he had an idea in mind, but it felt surprising to me.
Yeah, well, I think the idea, I mean, if I understand, and again, I looked at this game more than I looked at a lot of the other ones because I just thought the opening was so weird that I had to try to look at it to even understand anything. But I thought he was trying to force the bishop to e7 so that he doesn't have to deal with like f4, queen e7. Which, I mean, this is totally playable though, so because he can just play bishop f2 here, and this is still like very reasonable. But I think that was his idea. I think.
And then I just wonder. I wonder if it's worth it to give Black knight a5 with tempo, though.
Yeah, it's a fair question. I think Black was actually pretty happy with the outcome of the opening, or at least like it was not a disaster. So he plays f4 now, which is kind of forced because otherwise, f5, f4 is coming. Knight a5, queen c2, c6. Reasonable move. I mean, of course, there were other possibilities. Bishop g2, bishop d6. So c4 was an interesting an interesting decision, um, and
Why
it
is it?
worked. Sorry, what was that?
Why is that an interesting decision? It looks almost forced to me.
Yeah, well, I guess it was. I thought it was maybe possible to castle or do something different, but
Okay,
yeah,
but if you don't get c4 and your position is going to suck, I mean that's
yeah,
just
it's
like,
probably true.
I mean maybe you
Uh,
don't have to do it right this second, but it's I guess black wasn't necessarily threatening b5 because you could take it, so maybe you could castle and meet b5 with rook takes b5. But if black goes like bishop e6 or something, maybe then I guess
yeah,
that. But no, I mean for me like c4 is clearly the break white wants to make. I mean maybe he should have waited a move. I'm not sure, but it doesn't look like a surprising decision from Magnus at all.
yeah, no, understood. So GF,
Mhm.
um, bishop e6. Again, some other possibilities, but they do get to an interesting. Uh,
Yes, this actually was a moment I was curious about. Why did Fallujah take with the pawn on d5? Does
all
he?
right, so
I
you
mean,
yeah, so you're
there
one.
must be some concrete reason because
Yeah, I didn't look at this position, so I gotta look.
I mean,
So
like it feels very much like this bishop on e6 will be worse than the bishop on g2. I mean, it opens up the g file a little bit faster, and the question becomes if that's something black cares about. But somehow I'm not sure I do. The king on h8 should be quite safe, and
yeah, it would lead to a slightly different type of position, or just because in the game white castled next and then played king h1, while here I imagine they probably won't. But I don't know if it changes. Like let's
he
say they
will keep
play,
his king in the center. But
yeah, like rook g1 doesn't really do anything. Maybe just knight f3 to e5, or
sure, but that also doesn't do that much.
no,
I don't know.
I agree.
Maybe Blight's better here. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I somehow it was very interesting to me that Fallujah took with the bishop on with the pawn on d5. My instinct would have been to take with the bishop, but
Yeah,
I think it's briefly with the computer, and it actually preferred Fallujah's choice,
but
which
it
is
is interesting because it does seem to make positionally it makes a lot of sense to not have the bishop on
yeah.
e6, you know. But
There must be some concrete reasons,
yeah,
but it was very surprising to me, at least, that the computer seemed to prefer taking with the pawn.
yeah. So now he
So
plays king
I
h8,
guess
which
White's bishop on g2 isn't very good either. So I suppose that makes some sense.
yeah. Now they both get like one side gets his knight to e5, the other side gets a knight on c4. Um,
I
so I'm
think
just
Black has to be fine here.
yeah, I agree. So now I think maybe
Oh,
like I thought giving that bishop for the knight maybe was the start of things going wrong
this is
for
a very strange decision. I'm
because
not sure.
that leaves black with a pretty bad bishop on e6, and this bishop if it ever gets to
I
the I
don't
mean the
like
dark
that.
squares are just really dangerous, and the knight just
Among
kind of
other,
becomes an idle piece on c4 that doesn't really have
but
any.
okay, like for example, Fallujah followed up with Rook G8 next. I have no idea why. I mean, unless White is worried about Black is worried about White taking on C4, I have no idea why you would play Bishop E5 now. You could do that whenever you
Yeah,
wanted,
and
but once you've done
he could play
that,
rook c8. I mean, if he's worried about the capture on c4, and I don't think.
right? Because it looks like White Magnus found the plan to double his rooks on the F file and try to hit the F5 pawn. Like he never would execute this plan if you would not take on E5. If here like Magnus would start playing like Rook G1, Bishop F3 or something, then if you want to take on E5, I mean, I still don't love it, but fine, it makes more sense. If you're going to do it, I don't see why you would do it right away.
Yeah, no, I agree. Um, I agree. So I didn't like bishop takes e5, and after bishop e5, fe, rook g8. Maybe rook g8 is also not best, but it's but I already don't love it after this. Rook g8, bishop f4. So he takes his time.
Another thing is all of a sudden this knight on c4, I mean, it looks very nice, but it actually doesn't do anything, and it clogs the open c file that black could try to
Yeah,
use.
no, I agree. I agree. It's a pretty square, but and it doesn't stop white from doing anything. Like it's not like a knight on d5 where you know
Yeah,
it
I mean,
stops white can basically execute their plan.
you got to be aware of things that are pretty but useless.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things and people like that out there, but
So now they double, well, white doubles, I guess. Black.
yeah, this plan with Rook F1 and double the rooks on the F file, it would make no sense if Black had him swapped on
Yeah,
E5. And I think Black is basically lost. Like the bishop will come to C1, and then what happens?
yeah. It seems like it's untenable. So now he basically kind of goes for some tricks. I mean, to try to muddy things up, but it didn't seem to quite work. And again, like now the bishop on c1 actually dominates the knight on c4.
Yeah.
So it just seems like white is kind of playing with an extra piece on the king side because that bishop can come in at any point. So he goes rook g8, which is really sort of a
It's desperation, but yeah, you
yeah.
had to.
That's exactly it's a and
Then
rook
bishop
g2.
f5, bishop h3 is well
Yeah,
calculated.
bishop h3 was just a very nice
Because
move to.
you would think that rook h3 is more natural, but then there will be queen takes f5.
Yeah, exactly. Rook h3. I guess it actually loses, right? Queen f5. There's the mate on g1. So that was a nice trick. But yeah, bishop h3 kind of stops everything, and it's really white attacking more than black. Um, and now I think he just. I mean, he was playing. They didn't have much time, but rook e2 was either desperation or just he blundered. Um,
I
he might
think
have
he would.
blundered rook g1, but
I
it
think
was
both.
lost,
I mean,
losing anyway, and
at this
so
point,
there's
I
no
think he understood he's losing the game and needs to make some kind of mess if he possibly can. And well, I mean,
yeah
this one.
with bishop g4 now, rook f to g3, and there's mate on g8. Whoops, wrong square here.
Yeah, so I think this really came down to this decision to play bishop e5. That felt very wrong to me.
Yeah. All right, so let's go through the second game of this match. And I guess I like going through the games in a row of the match. It just feels like you get a better feel for what was happening that way. So in this game, so Firouzja's white. He's lost the first game. Magnus plays the Sicilian today.
Yeah, this game I barely understood at all. I mean, I've never really understood these Rosalimo positions. Believe it or not, I've played almost every opening in my life. I don't think I've ever played a Rosalimo.
Okay. So,
Either.
all right. Well, the good thing is I looked at the opening a very little bit. Well, more than you think I would for a blitz game today. And because Queen C7, so I have actually played this for black, and knight E7 is the most played move and move that I've played. Queen C7, I don't remember seeing, but it's interesting. I mean, the plan for black is usually to play E5, D6, knight E7, knight G6, and kind of keep the options open with the pieces, but ideally play like bishop E7, castle F5. In theory, if you get 10 moves, then you have a beautiful, beautiful position for black. Of course, white has all kinds of breaks. They can play C3, D4. They can play A3, B4. And then one of the main things is that when the knight goes to G6, so if instead of Queen C7, you play Knight C7, then they have all these ideas of playing with H4. So they can go like Queen E2, Knight G6, H4, and try to play H5. So Queen C7 is a little bit different. And I did look at some. It has been played, but Queen E2 I actually don't love. It's been played also, but I think it makes more sense to just castle here.
What if white plays E5 and stops you from playing D6 comfortably?
Yeah, so here on E5, again...
No. White plays E5, not black.
Oh, yeah, so E5 is possible at various points. Usually black will meet it with either like F6, a combination of F6 and D6 at certain point, but probably here F6.
Yeah, and
I guess it's hard to hold it. So that's why sometimes they play like Queen E2 first or just try to support it.
I suppose that makes some sense.
So, but E5 is thematic. Like they do play E5 sometimes. But I was looking at one line that I thought was interesting, and this is kind of random, but if castle's E5, because in the game it goes Queen E2 and black played E5. But if he goes first castles, then on E5, I looked at interesting move, Knight H4. I think it has been played once. And it's actually really interesting. Then you play F4 next. And it kind of takes advantage of the queen on C7.
Black's going C5, E6, E5, BC6, Queen C7 in like the first 7 moves of the game and not developing his pieces. I mean, he might have a good position strategically, but you should have chances to open him up.
Yeah, that's why I figured, if you're going to go for the slowest plan ever, it makes sense to try to blow it open. So I looked at this, and actually Knight H4, I didn't see really like. First, the computer likes D5, but you know what? After F4, I mean, I'll take white, especially in a fast time control. Developing all your pieces, and black is just making pawn moves. But I think generally it's probably better for white.
Sure.
But anyway, I looked at this for a little while. But he played, you don't have to play after castles. You could play just Knight E7. But then then you can kind of revert to an old plan, Knight G5, and I still think it's interesting to play a little bit more aggressively. So instead he played Queen E2. Of course, nothing wrong with it. E5. And now I mean, he didn't get a bad position, but I did feel like Black's setup was basically justified. Like he managed to get this is a normal position, but sort of a better version. Whoops, I hit my mic. Sorry about that. He gets a better version than what you normally get in this line, in my opinion. This is not to say that it's like better for Black or anything. I think White is okay, but um, so then they make these moves. I mean, it's if you've never played this kind of position, it all looks a little weird. It's kind of a slow build up, very
It
close.
certainly looks weird to me.
Um, it
It
does,
certainly looks weird to me.
yeah, for both
I mean,
sides. Or
White, I mean, White brings the knight to e3, presumably to prevent f5, which I don't think he's scared of because of the weakness of the g5 square, and then plays knight g1 to go where? I mean, I don't. Maybe
yeah,
I'm
no.
too old for stuff
Well,
like this.
and then the thing too is then if you had to play guess the next move, so he plays bishop d8, which makes some sense. And one of the plans for Black is to play knight f8, knight e6, but now this move, queen f3. I mean, it is really an odd plan to play knight g1 followed by queen f3 with the idea to play knight e2. I mean, I guess again, the position is so closed that it doesn't seem to
Well, it's like the
totally.
queen and the knight are playing. What's that? What's the name of that game where like you stop at the red light and then you have to get out of the car and switch seats before the light turns green?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, and I don't know what the
I
name
don't know
of
what the
that
name
game.
of the game is. It's not coming from off the top of my head, but I think that's what the queen and knight wanted to do from f3 and
Yeah. Yes, I know what you mean. It's like you have these little or like these puzzles where you have to make a face from all the kind of like a Rubik's cube, but like with a face, and you're shifting. You have to shift the piece that's in one corner with the piece that's
hang
in
on, let me
another.
just get a glass of water. You can keep talking
Yeah.
for just a second.
All right. So after Queen F3, they make some moves here. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I realize I got 6 more games to go after this. Um, But surprisingly, White's position was still very reasonable. F4, bishop e6, b3. It's still pretty reasonable. F5, bishop f7. Knight c1 was seems a little bit slow to me. I mean, he does want to play c3 and trap the knight, but that idea doesn't really. I mean, it doesn't work because there's just too much pressure against b3. So yeah, maybe he could have tried something else than knight c1. Um, which then Magnus takes advantage of the fact that White is still kind of putting their pieces on the back rank to play d5. Um, but now after castle, so this is move 22. Now Magnus actually gave a sort of a crazy explanation for what happened next, and he has he can make almost any move here, rook b8 or bishop b6, I think, or I mean there's different ideas. I still think White is okay. It's a bit of a weird position because if Black is not castling because they're probably worried that White's going to play g4, and it could be scary on the to not get mated on g7 in certain cases. Um, so he's kind of waiting to decide where to put his king. But Magnus here hallucinated, and it's a real hallucination because he explained it in the interview that he gave after the match. And c4 was just a blunder. And what he said that he saw, first of all, he said that he actually intended to play pawn takes e4, pawn takes e4 and then c4, which leads to the same thing. But he says that in his mind, that's what he wanted to play. He actually played c4. It doesn't change anything. I mean, both are not very good. So pawn takes e4, pawn takes c4, pawn takes e4. And then in the interview, he said that his plan was to play knight f3 check. And if you see him on the, he actually starts to kind of shake his head. And he said that he thought after rook f3, queen d4 that it was check and he was picking up the rook, which is that is pretty rare for Magnus to do something like that. But I guess makes us all feel better for all the blunders that we make in all of our games. But of course he recovers after pawn takes e4, plays bishop b6. But now this position is actually pretty tricky for him to play, mainly because his knight risks being trapped by the move c2, c3. So he's got to find creative ways to avoid that. And so for now, he's bishop b6 makes a lot of sense. If c3, there's knight c2, and of course the knight has a square, and this is really bad for White. But of course, White moves his king. He plays rook b1 first, which is fine. Queen a7. Now he moves his king. I don't know why he didn't go to h1, which seemed just to not run into checks, which is sometimes relevant. So I don't know why he went there. I mean, it's probably the same, but I would somehow not put it there. Rook d8, and now now it's actually still a messy position. So in a sense, Magnus is a little bit lucky that even though he he played c4 for the wrong reason. It's not that bad of a
Keep
position.
in mind, when he plays c4, he is sacrificing a pawn and giving white a bad structure. It's not like he sacrificed a piece and missed something. That's when things really
No,
go.
exactly. It's and positionally, it's in some ways justified. He's opening up the position for his bishops,
So
I
what is
guess.
his point in the event of c3 now? Where is his knight going to go?
So on c3, there's some rook d2 tactics. I think it's knight somewhere. Maybe knight b3.
Oh, okay. And you take d2 and with compensation. Oh,
Yeah,
right. d3 is fine. You don't even need to take d2.
yeah,
Okay.
you're right. So on rook takes, he'll just play bishop e3, and I mean, well, this one is just good for him, but maybe some.
So there's still some threats on black has.
Yeah, so he's still got. It's still not so trivial, this position. So he played rook b2, which isn't. You know, it's actually one of the top computer moves. I think it's sort of a weird move because it doesn't actually threaten. I think c3 is not still
But
completely a threat because there's still knight b3.
it's overprotecting things in
Yeah,
advance. It's actually, and I guess eventually when this rook lifted to g2, this is sort of a sign of a great player when they can sort of anticipate a rook lift like this and one of those mysterious rook moves. Like if I were to make a case, I don't know if you remember the game where Magnus beat Maxime Vacher-Lagrave in the last round of the Singfield Cup, and at some point he played this very strange move, rook b7, and then eventually like played e5 and swung the rook to g7 and gave mate. Like when the seventh rank was completely clogged at the moment that he played rook b7.
huh.
It's oftentimes it's generally a useful move like this if you can see the possibility of a rook lifting to the side down the road, but you're not sure what to do at the moment. Just anticipating that in the future can be very helpful.
Yeah, no, that's a good
I
good
don't know if you know the
explanation.
game I'm talking about with Magnus and MVL, but
Yeah, I don't actually. I'm not sure I remember the game.
it was a
Exactly.
game where it was a Rosalimo, and at some point Magnus played bishop takes c3, taking the knight, so that after e5 there will not be bishop g5, and then the b7 rook lifts to g7, and it's basically made.
Okay.
But
All right. So now Magnus decides to castle, which okay. I mean, it makes sense at some point that he has to find a move, and it's not that easy.
well, he has to find out something to do with the h8 rook.
Yeah.
I mean, there was once upon a time g6 was an idea, but that's clearly not the case anymore.
No. Yeah. It's not. It's still a pretty tough position for kind of both sides to play. So castles now. Of course, Alireza goes for g4, which makes. I mean, it's a bit of a. It's committal, of course, but it makes sense that once the king is there, he's going to try to attack, especially in this time control.
Right.
So now knight e2, which was a really strong, I think, practical decision.
I think this was the best move for sure.
What's that?
I think this was the best move.
Yeah, it's a really good it's a good exchange sacrifice basically. Queen takes e2, rook d2, queen d2, bishop e3. So queen e2 was actually probably a mistake. Magnus was in the post-game interview was saying that maybe queen g2 was a better move, simply because it protects the e4 pawn. So if he goes queen d4, which is the next move in the game, then his e pawn is defended. So here he can actually just play like knight d3, and okay, it's not it's just it's a really messy position, but it's better than the game. I guess there's other moves that black can try here, but anyway, that was queen g2. He played queen e2. Now after queen d4, he's got a little bit of a problem. Because the e4 pawn falling is a big difference. I mean, that makes the king so much weaker, and it's an important pawn to lose. So here, I was pretty sure Magnus was going to win. Actually, I was watching this game live.
What is wrong with rook f3 there? I was curious. I haven't run the
rook f3. There's bishop g1, I guess.
That'll
I knew there was something there. And there was rook e1, I guess, then bishop f4.
Yeah, but then here black is good to go.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's actually the game. So
my guess is that Firouzja had simply missed bishop g1.
Maybe, yes, that could be. So he goes king h3.
Yeah, this looks very good for black now.
Yeah, I mean, this position, and in practice, you would think that it's like gonna.
Yeah, but at the same time, you have to keep in mind, like, there's things Firouzja does not do that well for a player of his level, like anyone else. He has strengths and weaknesses, but his biggest strength, I think, is just seeing like little tactics and things very, very, very fast. Yeah. And that's the reason which I think is a much more useful skill, and the faster the game goes for obvious reasons. That's why, in classical chess he's obviously strong, but I don't think it's too controversial to say, at least at this point, there's still a pretty big difference between him and the really top guys. But in these games where like little tactics are everywhere. The position cannot be calculated. I mean, it's complicated, and you simply have to go on your intuition in a messy position. I think he's, along with like Magnus and Hikaru, he's probably like the best player in the world.
Yeah, I
And
think
so,
for I totally agree. And there was one
so
position when they played this Banter Blitz Cup where he goes like Queen F4 really really fast. It was in a Queen and Rook like major piece endgame, and he plays this Queen F4 like in 1 second, and so he had clearly seen it in advance, and it was just even Magnus was like shocked by it. And I mean, it's not complicated, but it's really like just one of these
right.
sneaky moves.
And this kind of thing doesn't help you that much in classical chess. But basically, in a position like this one, I can see that the computer reads equal. I would be shocked if Ferrugia holds this in classical against
Oh
Magnus, but
yeah, no, I mean,
in something like this,
well, the thing is, actually, he basically Faruja basically goes down here, right? Like in the next, what happens in the next 10 or not 10, but whatever next four moves, like up to here, like he's at. I think evaluation wise, it's gone, it's gone bad. Like already the computer is actually giving black as winning, so it's not like he played this part incredibly well. I think,
no, but he
like
sees the little tactics very, very, very fast, and
yeah,
even with no time on the clock. And that's again, I mean, that's not going to help him. Like, I mean, it's certainly helpful in classical. I mean, it's not that helpful, but what he does here is really very strong. I mean, I think he might be the only guy out there who would hold this against Magnus, much less turn it around and win it.
yeah, and so here Magnus was saying after the game that maybe as a practical, the computer has better moves probably, but as a practical, he should have just tried pushing his a pawn forward to distract white a little bit.
Yeah, my instinct would be try to fix the king. Is there something wrong with king f8 after knight f2?
I don't know.
I'm
King
concerned
f8.
about the back rank. I am concerned about knight g4 coming. I mean, this felt like the move to me. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe doesn't look crazy.
Okay, but I mean, it's tough though. I mean, the guy played knight f2. It might not be a bad move. I mean, I guess it is, but it's not even remotely subtle. It's abundantly obvious what white wants. He's about to go play knight g4.
Yeah, sure.
It's something you don't really want to. It's kind of hard to like go play a4 or a3, a2, and just
Well, knight
back it.
f2 also he's covering h1, which he kind of
Right.
had to
But
do, I guess.
But is this sort of like when your king is under fire like this, especially in a fast game, it's very hard to justify in your mind going
Yeah.
a4, a3, a2. I mean, you'll look like such a
No, I
doof.
know. But and the thing is, it looks like for Magnus, I think he thought that he had this in control. Like white is forced to make a move backwards, and then he confidently plays rook d2 pretty fast, and then it just turns out that this falls into a really like devilish trap.
Yeah.
So
This is the stuff you don't want to get with
um,
Farouk.
yeah, and so rook b8, king h7, queen g4, and yeah. So now this is a mating that is no there is no getting out of. Moving the bishop uh, doesn't help, of course.
There was queen g7 made in one as well.
I didn't see that, but that's I'm not Faruja. I don't spot this kind of tactic for some reason. The only thing I spotted was that queen g6 was still possible. I had looked also at bishop g5, pawn takes g5, which doesn't help anything because the check on f1 never really does more than give a check. So, yeah, basically a sudden turn in this game with Alireza. So Alireza tying a score. We got to move along because we're already 35 minutes in, and we've only gone through 2 of 8 games.
Yeah. Have we interacted with the chat at all?
Yeah, I actually just interacted with one guy while you were talking in the chat itself because Shock Pirate was saying that he was watching the Lubes, I believe, on the German stream.
No,
and I said I was slightly offended, but of course he's joined us now, so that's okay. So game 3, they repeat the same few first moves, but not more. So Alireza immediately deviates here and plays castle. So I guess he decided that he didn't feel like testing.
I mean, it's much simpler move. It's get your pieces castle. Don't. I mean, knight c6 is not a bad move, but you have to really know what you're doing, and it can go wrong very fast if you're not careful. Like, it's strategically poor. I mean, you have to. You have to justify.
I don't know this variation, so I'm at this point. I'm out of book, so to speak.
I don't like bishop f5.
Yeah, I was wondering if because to me these plans with knight c6 are very concrete, and if you just get stuck in a position with your knight on c6, then it's just a little bit worse than
I'm
what you would
pretty sure
want
the
to
best
get.
move there is c5, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. So now after queen b3, knight c6, I mean, to me, this just, I mean, I wouldn't be that happy to play this position for black. It looks like a worse version, but I don't really know anything. So he goes knight h4, which is interesting.
Oh, he wants the bishop on d3. In all of these Carlsbad structures, in general, if black can get the bishop to f5 and keep it there and
Right.
challenge the b1 h7 diagonal, he's always going to be fine. But here it seems like the bishop is unstable and white will get bishop d3. And he has the luxury of playing slowly like this, specifically because black has played knight c6, which means he's not going to go kill him in the center with c5. I mean, he tried anyway, but it cost him a lot of time. And
Yeah.
white was able to fix his pieces before having to face c5.
Yeah, I guess the one thing he got was this bishop, but
Yeah, but how much does that help you? I mean,
yeah, no, I don't know how much it helps.
it's not in c6. It's so bad.
Yeah, it just takes time takes like 3 moves to go to d7 and play c6. It's
I mean, what he wants to do here is like play knight a5 to c4 to d6, but the pawn on a5 has ruined that for him as well. I mean,
right.
Position's definitely difficult for black.
Yeah, and so this game was sort of more of a standard like Magnus win. It felt like, where he managed to just get a nice positional advantage after b3. Pawn takes. Oh, actually, sorry, they get this structure, but this is not a structure that you want to get, I guess, as black, with the c pawn is weak and white has a passed d pawn and control of the center.
The piece assortment is sort of in black's favor because he's got more pieces that can fight for b4 than white does. And if he can clog on the b file as he did in the game, it's not going to be that easy.
Right. Yeah, it didn't look so easy. I mean, actually, the computer likes black's position enough.
I think so. At some moment, Ferrugia missed one chance, but I mean,
yeah.
I mean, so this is all fine, but basically, like if you look at this position after, say, they got queen a3, rook c8, rook fc1, knight b4, just imagine this position and take any pair of minor pieces off the board you want, and white's going to be much better, I think. But as is given the way the present minor pieces are working, I think black has more counterplay than we expected.
Right. Yeah. No, that's fair.
So Magnus's knight e5 to d3 makes a lot of sense. This is trying to exchange off a pair of minor pieces.
Yeah.
Specifically the knight on b6.
Yeah.
And I guess here I think apparently Ferrugia missed a chance after queen b6, rook ab1.
Oh yeah, I didn't see this. But
I think he must have missed
now that I have the engine on, I see it.
Yeah. But this is very hard in a rapid game. I mean, rook b2, and then I think queen a6 is only moved to basically not resign. And then, like, black is just barely in time, like after bishop f1, bishop c4, and then if knight b4, a b4, rook b4, bishop f1, we'll have queen takes f1 and c1 queen at the end. I mean, if you give someone enough time in classical, they'll get this rapid.
This is difficult with the hanging flag for sure. Instead, he plays bishop f5, and then he just gets into a position that's basically lost.
Yeah, there's nothing to be done. You lose the c pawn here, and the game's obviously over. Yeah. This was a nice tactic, though, that if ever knight c2, there's always queen f8.
Right, yeah. I'll show that on the board. Yeah. So the rest of this game was pretty clear. And then the last game between so now Magnus is leading 2-1, plays black and needs to draw. He, instead of the Sicilian, he decides to play e5 in the second game. I'm not sure if that's because he just needs to draw or just because he likes to change it up a little bit.
He also may have been dissatisfied with the way the first game went.
Yeah, that's true. It did. But so Ali Reza played knight c3. His opening choice here seemed a little odd for a game that he really needs to win.
Okay, but you're in a must-win situation. You face the Berlin. I mean, there's no good options. I mean, it's not like you're.
Yeah, I guess he had a game. He had a game yesterday, right, where he went to this bishop c6 stuff, and we talked about that. Not yesterday.
But he ended up like much worse very quickly. Yeah. He made it look easy.
Yeah, against Ding. So, but this game didn't look like.
Yeah, I mean, here black is obviously very fine.
Yeah, I think this structure. I feel like I've already seen one game of Magnus where he gets this CB structure. Just looks completely okay for black.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean it's something I actually wrote about in my first book. Is all of these structures. If you have doubled pawns, like this, it's very important that the forward doubled pawn can be defended by another pawn. So basically, here the b5 can be defended by a pawn. So as a result, because it's on b5 and the pawn on a6 defends it, the structure I think is quite fine for black. I mean, it'd be different if it like had cost him his bishop pair, but if white had been able to get a4 through before black could play b5, then I think that black could have ended up a little bit worse. But here, like he didn't have a chance because the bishop was on c4 and hanging. It had to move away, or
yeah,
the bishop was hanging. It had to move, and then black got b5 in. So there was just never a chance for white to do it.
that's interesting. That makes a lot of sense. Um,
And
Someone in
so
the chat is saying, why not play like Lasker and Fischer, exchange Rye Lopez? Well, you actually can't play the exchange Rye Lopez because Magnus played knight f6 on move 3.
and it hasn't stood the test of time. I mean, that opening might have been okay once upon a time, but nowadays, I mean, I played it once earlier, like last year, just as a surprise weapon, basically. But it's, I mean,
Which is it, the bishop g4 line, or which line is the
oh,
most?
bishop g4, queen g6, queen f6, like whatever you want for black.
Yeah.
I mean, I played queen f6 as black against Safarli in the World Cup, which I think is totally fine. And I mean, it's
Yep.
exchange or Lopez, I wouldn't recommend. A good rule of thumb is any opening with exchange in its name or any opening named after an animal should be avoided.
Yeah, that's a. I'm gonna have to revise my repertoire that included the orangutan.
Yeah, no bueno.
Okay. So, and there's a we played this game before, right? Like openings, names of animals. There's the lion, the pelican. There's not too
Pelican's
many.
actually okay, but it's also
Yeah,
not the most
the
common name.
pelican is not the most common name, and it's not. It's actually
Sure.
named after someone named Pelican. I think not.
And I'll even the Norwegian rat also is pretty bad, right?
Yeah, the Norwegian rat. No offense to Magnus and his
I'm sure he's not
country
offended,
mates.
and or at least, well, he might be. I hope he's offended, but I'm sure he's not.
No, yeah. Um, so this game, I guess, going back to this game, it's nothing too exciting happens here until much later. But Magnus was very comfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, here he was, I think even maybe a little bit more than comfortable.
Yes.
There was one sort of moment where it got a little bit messy, which is always going to happen in this kind of time control. I mean, of course, nobody's going to play perfectly, but
Apparently missed d4 at some moments.
Farouz missed d4, or maybe here
right
actually.
Here.
Yeah,
I think the point is that after e takes d4, he missed knight e3.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
And then here
it could be a little worse. Yeah,
it doesn't. I mean, I know the computer seems to think white's much better, but it really doesn't look that bad for black.
The one that I remembered was when I was listening live, and in the chat they were Peter Vidler was talking about this. Queen takes g4 and knight f1. It's a little unpleasant.
Really, rook c7. Go after these pawns. Like, what is so bad about this for black?
Maybe it's not.
So
I was going to take on g4, but I guess maybe it's just
it takes c3.
Yeah, actually, you're holding this probably without any difficulty.
Not yet. This will be easy.
No, you've just refuted our hours of analysis.
Hours?
No, I'm kidding. It was quick. It was while it was happening, and I didn't have time to go back and look at this. But yeah. So anyway, the game goes knight to h5, and here black has plenty of play. I mean, it's not really like being down a pawn because there's all these weaknesses, and so he held comfortably. If anything, he was better at various points.
Yeah, I mean, I think Magnus could have won this game, but
yeah, I think he decided that a draw was he
blundered later. He blundered later.
Yeah, here I guess he's probably winning, right? He's just, at least he's trying to win.
At some point he blundered. Basically, at some point he blundered his b pawn.
Right.
Like, knight b3. When the knight was back on d4 a second ago, like rook c2 is not coming, and like black is winning here. But
yeah,
as soon as he plays knight f3, rook c2 comes and it's a draw. I mean, okay, but I also, I don't know. Magnus probably wasn't even paying that much attention at this point. He was like, okay, I won this match pretty handily. There's
Yeah, he did really want to win this match. He said in the interview that he wanted to crush him, so he wanted to get his revenge.
Well, I mean, I don't know if he crushed him. I mean, I think he was.
No, that's why. He didn't. That's why he said he was upset because he really would have wanted to win that second game, and then he could have. But instead he admitted that he didn't crush him at all. It was very tense and not. So
he could have certainly. Basically, this looks to me like Magnus messed up multiple times, could have scored more points, and still won the match very comfortably.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
I mean, so.
All right, so now let's move on to Hikaru against Anish Giri. Hikaru had a topsy-turvy first match against Magnus in the first round. So the second round here, this is the only match so far that's gone to Armageddon, the Hikaru Carlsen match. Now in this game, so Hikaru plays d4. He gets white in the first game. Plays against the King's Indian, not the setup that Sam would probably consider the most dangerous, but
this isn't so stupid though.
No, it's actually it's not. I mean, and actually I have to say that I looked a little bit at some games played previously. I mean, in this C5 D5, I guess Black can play. I mean, I'm assuming Black can also play like a D6 setup.
Yeah, that should be fine. I mean, it's a decent try. I mean, it's particularly stupid against the King's Indian, but very effective against the Grunfeld. And nowadays, I mean, I don't know if Anish has played a single King's Indian in his entire life. He's a Grunfeld guy. And,
right. No, that makes sense. So I guess that's the main idea. And so if they play D6, like
but I was surprised by Hikaru's choice later on, because after Bishop G4, my understanding of these positions is that White is supposed to play H3 and take the bishop, and that his pawn on E3 is better than it would be on E4 when Black would be fine, but pawn on E3 that White is better. I think that was supposed to be the big idea here, if I'm not wrong.
Okay. Yeah, I saw there weren't too many games in this position after knight
D2 felt very wrong to me.
Yeah. I actually thought, so I thought Black was okay until he did
Rook E8, I think, was an extremely bad move.
Yeah, so I think here he's got to play first knight C7.
Well, the big point is that I want to play F5 later, and I think Rook E8 is not very helpful in doing that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I don't not that
like here. If White were to play E4, I would think Black should go knight D7 and then F5.
Right. But you agree with knight C7 instead of Rook E8, right? Like.
Yeah, I mean, Rook E8. It feels like, basically. Let me put it this way. Knight C7 is a move you definitely want to play, and Rook E8 is a move you're not sure you want to play. So it depends on what White does. So start with Knight C7 and then take it from there. I mean, I also think, I mean, it feels wrong to me. Like, I want to play F5. I think this is the best plan in these structures for Black. And so I want something like Knight C7, and so I would even consider like Knight C7 or Knight E8 together. Like, I mean, no, not Knight E8 here. Start with Knight C7.
Right. So Knight C7 kind of forces. Well,
let White figure out how to deal with this pawn, and then potentially Knight E8 F5, potentially Knight D7 F5. You could even potentially consider something like. You can also start throwing A6 B5 very quickly. I just think Rook E8 doesn't help Black's plan very much. I mean, it's a move you sort of play when you don't know what to do.
So he had a plan. But it was probably not a good plan at all. Like, so after Knight C4, he goes Knight E4, and it just seems like this exchange of pieces didn't work out well for him at all.
But yeah, like, this is a key point. Like, if you look here, White is almost begging Black to play Knight B4, and then he still correctly realized that's not the right square for the Knight because it looks nice and doesn't do anything. Yeah. So if he's going to, the only reason I would think you would stay on A6 with the Knight is if you like are planning on potentially going to B4 if White plays A4. But given that Anish well understood that that's not the best plan anyway, I think you really needed to go back to C7.
Yeah. Now it's I didn't see an easy way for Black to get out of this position. I mean, I thought Hikaru played really well this next part of the game. There were
still some strange moments, like
so Bishop D2 was interesting. There's a little trick, Knight D5, Queen D3.
I thought he had Bishop A5 in mind, but okay.
Oh, maybe. I didn't see Bishop A5.
I didn't see Queen D3, so we'll call it even.
There you go. So.
Why I did see it,
but Bishop C3 was
this was another thing. I mean, maybe look, Anish is a brilliant positional player. I'm sure he had an idea behind what he did, but it baffles me that he believes this rook will be well placed on D8. I'm sure he must have had a reason, and it's probably something refined that I don't understand. But like, what does the rook do on E8? I just don't get it. Like, why would you put the rook there?
Yeah. This gets a little bit odd.
But yeah, after he wanted to play Queen F7 or something, but like, I don't know. It was very strange.
Yeah. Yeah. So now bishop e1 was a nice. He starts to make these sort of subtle maneuvers with the bishop um, that seem to be reasonably good.
Bishop's back and forth. Bishop c3, e1, g3, e1, d2.
Yeah. But I've noticed that Hikaru does like these positions where like both sides kind of wait. Like I've seen those a lot in his games for some reason. Have you noticed that?
It
Or?
was a very good decision.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've not played Hikaru very much in fast chess. In slow chess, I'm not sure that's necessarily true.
Yeah. So he gets the structure, which now he's got the plan to play a5 sort of when he wants, and it's hard to. Black is pretty passive.
More or less lost strategically.
Yeah. Yeah, f4 after f4 e4 it's hard because then now you always have to watch for some e5 ideas, and so it's
it all comes down to the quality of the knights. Like if you played Bughouse and took, like, for example, if you look at the position a couple moves later after bishop d4, king h1, like go to the position after queen takes c3.
Yeah,
like it all came down to the knights. If you put this knight on e5, black is totally fine, but this knight has no way to get there. Like
yeah, no, that's
one bad piece makes a bad position. The knight ended up bad.
Yeah. Yeah, the rest was sort of just easy, it seems, for white. Things were collapsing. Yeah. Anish did let himself somehow play the move queen takes d7 here, which was probably just a move he made for humor, or he misclicked or something.
It's probably some kind of misclick, but it also is entirely irrelevant because there's a 0% chance of him not losing this game.
This was a completely
if it was a mouse slip, Anish should actually be quite happy that he mouse slipped in a position where it didn't change the result, because you definitely can mouse slip in positions where it will change the result, and that's much more painful.
Yep. So nice game by Hikaru, and then the other games of this match and were not as
I mean, I thought Anish played quite a nice game in this exchange Slav, where it seemed like he really took the upper hand with black, and I thought his attitude about it was great, but he couldn't break through. I mean, like if you go to,
I'll go through his white game first really quickly. Yeah. There was one thing I think. Well, he actually had so he had a very pleasant position here, I think.
Yeah, bishop e2 is a good regrouping move.
Yeah, and here he decided to go for the pawn up position, which makes practical sense. Although maybe there were other.
I would have rather moved the bishop away and kept the bishop there. You get c4 through, and this is.
Yeah, I mean, so bishop g3 was maybe.
I mean, he must have been concerned about knight c3. I can't think of another move.
Yeah.
Queen b3, like
knight d5.
Rook fd1 or something.
Yeah, this just looks suspicious to me for black. I mean, I don't know how you develop. And in the worst case, you can always go for a drawn position with white. I think there's no way to ever lose this.
I mean, it's comparing and contrasting, because the way he played was also very good for white, but I think this.
So he decides to go bishop d5, pawn takes, queen takes, knight e5. He wants to keep the queens on, at least for now.
Yeah.
So he's up at pawn, of course, 0 risk, and he probably just thought, okay, I mean, this is
but
I've got winning chances, but
the problem is white can't close the files. Like, for example, if I were to alter this position in one way, if I brought white's pawn from a2 to b2, I believe white would be completely winning, because he would stick the rook on d4, and then black could not close the d file or he could not open any files without giving white like a massive pawn center, and then white doubles on the d file, forces black to make decisions, keeps that position closed, and then starts throwing h4, h5. The problem that he's facing is that he's not going to be able to keep this position closed with rook d4 because of his own fractured queenside structure, and as a result, it's going to be very hard for white to avoid a lot of exchanges. While if this a pawn were on b2, for example, I think he'd be basically winning.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's a good point. So yeah, somehow, for I guess for those reasons, he eventually does go for an endgame, and Hikaru was able to hold. F5 was a good move, I think.
Yes, I agree.
He was able to hold without too much trouble here.
I mean,
After the
we
game,
got.
he was saying that he wasn't actually worried about really trying to hold this position. He thought it was just okay.
Yeah, I mean, again, this one I think White would have better chances if his queenside pawns
Yeah,
were not fractured. But even then, it's probably holdable. I mean,
yeah, and so this ended up being a draw.
sure.
Hikaru was figured out that this rook f5, it looks like a bad pawn structure. There's just no way through here, so he just holds comfortably.
Yep.
So all right, so now let's go. I guess the last game we'll go through is this exchange Slav, which gives you the opportunity. I wish it was actually you clicking. Just so you guys know, it is.
I mean, but Anish played a completely different line from what I want. After 6, knight c3. Yeah, so knight f6,
Yeah,
knight
sorry.
c3. In
Yeah,
this position, I'm recommending a6 because
yeah,
I want basically, it's funny because I want to play bishop f5. And funnily enough, playing bishop f5 directly here, like Anish did, does not let you keep the bishop there. It's a totally acceptable line. It's just different. But the point is that after bishop f5, as we see,
mm-hmm.
then after queen b3, as Hikaru played, knight a5, queen a4 check. Here, because black's pawn is not yet on a6, he can't play b5,
Right.
so he has to bring the bishop back. That's sort of one of the points of playing a6, as I was giving in my repertoire. And here, Anish has to bring the bishop back and give white control over the b1 h7 diagonal. And he made it work for black, but it's not something that I would have advocated. But the move that stuck out to me was after, for example, queen c2, e6, bishop d3. At this point here, like bishop b4, this, I mean, I don't know about this move specifically, but the attitude was right. Like Anish wasn't like, oh my God, rook c8, b5, b4, like try to, make a mess as soon as possible, like unbalance the game at all costs. No, he was simply completing his developments, castling, being comfortable with like a pretty boring and level but equal position. And then the next thing you know, Hikaru was getting outplayed. And this is how you play against the exchange Slav. I mean, you have to be calm and patient. He played b5 after all of his pieces were developed, not before.
Right. Yeah, and here his position was, I guess, starting to be quite comfortable.
Yeah, I would take black at this point for sure. This knight in c4 is very good.
Yeah, Hikaru sort of managed to hold here, but it looks unpleasant, right? I mean, you would take black.
Yeah, it is, but it's also very hard to break through. Yeah. I mean, the bane of every exchange Slav is that no matter how much you outplay your opponent, you can end up clearly better, but still having to do a lot of work to break through. And I mean, I don't know. Here, maybe Anish could have played better at some point, but I didn't really see where.
Yeah. No, Hikaru closed everything up on the king side, and now it's just dead even.
No infiltration.
Yeah, and then I guess in the last games, Anish had a few small chances, but not too much. So pretty solid match from Hikaru. I mean,
yeah, I mean Hikaru's been playing. I mean, I don't know. He's fallen so much in classical, probably roster form or who knows what. But his rapid and blitz has still been really pristine. I mean, so far he won a very convincing match against Anish. He sent Magnus to Armageddon, which is no small feat.
Yeah.
I mean, Magnus is darn good, and yeah, I don't know. I think Hikaru is, at least so far, has shown very good form here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and his score is not bad. Like losing with Armageddon, he still gets a point there, and so he and this was a convincing win, and it's very early. I mean, I think he's I've always thought in anything rapid, he's really a force. So I mean, of course, he's very good in slow chess too, but his results lately have been a little bit less than some of the other guys. So so he's not in the in club right now, I guess. But yeah, no, he's very, very impressive, and he looks confident, and it will be interesting to see how he does in the rest of the event.
Sure.
I guess before we end, we should do one last plug for Sam's Chessable course, since Sam has been joining us.
The link into the chat here.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'm just typing the link into the chat now, and
yeah, so it is I'm going through the course, which may give you a hint as to what opening I will play in the future, although I don't know that anyone cares. But
going back to classical chess at some point.
Yeah, it's been my intention. Frankly, I was actually scheduled to play in a tournament this summer in Greece, and I was going to treat it as a bit of a family holiday too. My kids were going to come, and my wife, of course. But now I'm fairly certain that's going to be canceled. It's in July. So yeah, if I don't go there, I'll have to find something else. But I do intend to play. So someone's asking which tournament is the one that was in Crete, in I guess it's Chania, like, well, written Chania. I think it's pronounced Chania. But I went to Greece on my honeymoon actually, and we really liked it. And we're looking forward to going back there. And I was going to go also to Paris afterwards and practice the French with my kids. But we are. What's that?
Can your kids speak French?
They do, yeah. They can and they do, but it is a struggle. I think living in the U.S. to keep speaking a second language unless you really practice every day. And
my French has gotten really bad.
We've been trying this quarantine period to just like speak French to the kids day in and day out. But my wife is also not a native French speaker, so not so easy. So we thought a trip to Europe for a little bit and spend some time in France would make sense. But so I'll have to find somewhere else to play, or hopefully Trobalov is asking if you speak any other languages.
Yeah, so I'd say like my French is like a 9 out of 10 if I'm in practice, maybe more like an 8 out of 10 now. And my Spanish is probably like a 4 out of 10, I would say.
All right. For me, my French is my first language, and then my Russian is maybe a 6 or 7 out of 10, and that's about it. Spanish maybe a 3. So
my Spanish, I've never really taken Spanish classes. I live in California. There's lots of like Mexicans and Latinos, and I like the Mexican grocery store, and I hear them talk, and so I pick up a little bit, but I haven't been formally trained.
Have you been able to buy toilet paper in California?
Oh yeah, that's not a problem. Just say hoy es el I can't say it. Hoy es el noche por fajitas.
All right.
Tengo que comprar toilet paper, and then people will give it to you.
All right. That doesn't sound like it's worthy of an English translation.
No, I don't think so.
But all right. Well, thanks for joining us. Maybe you'll come back before the end of the tournament. I got a couple other people in the next few days, and then Sam will be back. Definitely a treat to have someone so strong helping us go through these games. Buy his book. I'm going through it. Well, his book is e-course. What do we call? What is the way to refer to it?
I call it a course, but I don't know what you want.
All right. So go to Chessable, buy Sam's e-course, and yeah, I highly recommend it. But thanks for joining us, and I'll see you all tomorrow with another after show.
Yep. Have a good one. Bye.
It's time to take control of your journey towards chess mastery. Magnus Carlsen introduces Chessable, the definitive solution for studying chess. Move Trainer uses the science of spaced repetition to identify your strengths and eliminate your weaknesses. There's no need to set up a board, remember which page you're on, or keep track of all the moves you miss. Move Trainer empowers you to go from the opening to the end game with confidence. It's a seamless, effective, and fun way to study chess. Choose from one of the largest online chess libraries in the world, with hundreds of titles ranging from classic books through to our exclusive Chessable courses, including over 100 free courses. Get expert insights from International Master John Bartholomew, Grandmaster Sam Shankland, International Master Christoph Sulecki, Grandmaster Simon Williams, World Champion Magnus Carlsen, and hundreds of other instructors. Get started now and join our growing community of over 100,000 chess enthusiasts at chessable.com. Chessable, take control of your journey towards chess mastery.